When Kareem Tolliver stepped through the front doors of Millstone High in Lansing, Michigan, no one noticed. There were no friendly welcomes. No curious glances. Just the usual Monday morning rush, students in hoodies, sneakers squeaking across waxed linoleum floors, locker doors slamming shut, and the shrill ring of the first bell cutting through the noise like a blade. To the kids at Millstone, he was just another transfer student arriving mid-semester. His backpack was worn, the kind with frayed straps and a single broken zipper. His hoodie, faded from too many washes, hung loose on his frame. He walked slowly, deliberately, not timid, but cautious. Like someone who'd learned that before you speak, you better learn the room first. And that's exactly what Kareem had learned. Growing up in Detroit teaches you things no textbook ever will. How to keep your head down. How to move without drawing attention. His uncle called it moving invisible. And sometimes, invisibility was the difference between safety and danger. Millstone, though. Millstone wasn't Detroit. Here, the kids wore brand new Nikes and designer jackets. Their laughs were loud, their confidence louder. They owned the hallways, or at least they believed they did. Kareem didn't need to be told he didn't fit in. The looks told him plenty. Quick glances at his shoes, long stares at his hand-me-down clothes, like he didn't belong. And in their world, maybe he didn't. By lunch, he sat alone. Third table from the back, near the far window where no one else ever bothered to sit. Tray of school spaghetti, a banana, and a carton of chocolate milk. Simple. Quiet. Safe. That's all he wanted. But that's not how Millstone worked. Because when you're quiet in a place full of noise, people start to notice for all the wrong reasons. And when Kareem didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't defend himself, they took that silence as weakness. They were wrong. What started as a few cruel words in the cafeteria would grow into something far bigger. Because some people mistake calm for fear. And Kareem Tolliver? He wasn't afraid. He was just waiting. By Wednesday, the whispers had started. Nothing loud. Nothing direct. Just enough to be heard in passing, snickers in the hallway, offhand remarks in gym class, and sideways glances when Kareem walked by. He didn't respond. He didn't react. He didn't have to. But sometimes silence isn't peace, it's gasoline. And at Millstone High, there was always someone holding a match. That someone was Brock Simmons, varsity football star, class favorite, and son of a local business owner. Brock walked the halls like they were his personal driveway. His laugh was loud, his friends louder, and together they made a habit of targeting anyone who didn't fit their mold. Kareem? He was quiet, wore second-hand clothes, and kept to himself. In Brock's world, that was enough to mark him as a target. It started in the cafeteria. Kareem had just sat down with his tray, spaghetti, a banana, and a chocolate milk. He was halfway through his meal when he heard it. "Yo, what is that? You bring that from home or something?" Kareem looked up. Brock was standing a few feet away, grinning like he was performing for an audience. A few of his buddies chuckled. "Man's eating like it's the Great Depression," Brock added, louder this time. The table next to Kareem's laughed, some nervously, some sincerely. Kareem didn't respond. He picked up his milk, stood up, and walked away without a word. But to Brock, that wasn't surrender. That was disrespect. Over the next few days, it escalated. Someone shoved Kareem's books off his desk in science class. No one owned up. Charity Case appeared in dry erase marker on his locker. It wiped off, but the message stayed. He was tripped in the hallway near the vending machines, fell hard, caught himself, and still said nothing. To most students, he was invisible. But to Brock, he had become a challenge. In gym class, Kareem got paired with Brock for passing drills. Brock slammed the ball into Kareem's chest a little too hard. "Come on, Tolliver. Show me what you got. Kareem caught it clean. Then passed it back, firm, sharp, and straight to Brock's gut. It echoed. The gym went quiet for a second. "Alright," Brock muttered, that smile just a bit tighter than before. From that moment, Kareem's silence was no longer seen as weakness. It was seen as danger. Brock didn't like it. The bullying turned surgical. Gum in his locker. Smirks in the hallway. Rumors that Kareem had a record back in Detroit. That he'd been expelled. That he'd fought a teacher. None of it true. But in high school, truth doesn't matter, narrative does. On Friday, it reached its boiling point. Kareem was walking behind the gym, helping the custodian move desks, not to impress anyone, just to avoid the chaos of the main hall. But Brock had planned it that way. He was waiting, with two friends, Logan and Ty, near the dumpsters. Hands in their pockets, pretending to be casual. "Hey, Tolliver," Brock called. "You think you're smart? Just ignoring me every time I speak." Kareem stopped, 10 feet away. Backpack over one shoulder. Calm. "I didn't come here for you." Brock took a step forward. "You didn't come here at all. You got dropped here." It was a trap. Kareem saw it. He'd seen it before, in alleyways back home, in the eyes of boys who didn't know where to aim their pain. He tried to walk away. That's when Logan shoved him, hard. Kareem didn't flinch. But he did speak. "Back up." They didn't. Logan lunged with a wild punch. But Kareem didn't swing, he moved. One pivot. One sweep. Logan hit the concrete. Ty froze. Brock panicked. He lunged. Kareem dropped him with a clean elbow to the ribs. Controlled. Efficient. Over in 12 seconds. When the assistant principal rounded the corner, Kareem was standing tall, calm, unshaken, hands by his side. Brock was on the ground, panting. Logan sat dazed. Ty didn't say a word. That day, Kareem didn't walk away a hero. He walked away accused. Because in some places, when you fight back, even in self-defense, you're not seen as brave. You're seen as a threat. By Monday morning, Millstone High wasn't the same. The story of the fight behind the gym had already spread like wildfire. Not through official announcements, but through whispers in locker rooms, murmurs in lunch lines, and fast-moving texts. Everyone had heard something. And as is often the case, what they heard wasn't the truth, it was the version Brock Simmons told first. Kareem didn't walk through those halls like a student anymore. He walked like a suspect. Where once they ignored him, now they avoided him. Where once they whispered behind his back, now they stopped talking altogether when he entered the room. In first period, the boy who used to sit behind him moved to a different seat. In gym class, the coach told Kareem to just shadow drills today, no partner, no questions. At lunch, he still sat alone. But the silence now was deafening. Not the peace of solitude, but the tension of isolation. Across the cafeteria, Brock held court. He retold the story in fragments, dramatic, one-sided, and carefully edited. His words painted Kareem as the aggressor, as the one who snapped without reason. "Dude's psycho," he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Came at us like it was a movie scene. Kicked Logan like Bruce Lee or something." No one pushed back. A few looked unsure, but no one spoke up. The damage was done. Later that week, a blurry video surfaced on social media. Grainy, dark, and just long enough to show the last part of the fight, but not the part where Logan threw the first punch. Brock had uploaded it anonymously with the caption, "He thinks he's in a movie. Scared yet?" The comments poured in. "Don't mess with that dude. He's got issues. Why is he even here if he's gonna act like that? No one asked what started it. No one asked what Kareem had tried to avoid. Then came the formal steps. A phone call to Kareem's mother. A notice from the school district. A scheduled disciplinary hearing. Even though he hadn't thrown the first punch. Even though he had walked away from so much before. Now he wasn't just the new kid, he was a safety concern. That Thursday, 2 security officers were posted at the main entrance. They weren't usually there. But now they stood stiff, watching the students walk in. Watching Kareem. In homeroom, the principal's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. All students involved in last week's altercation are currently under review. A formal hearing will be held. Kareem didn't flinch. But something inside him shifted. He wasn't being judged for what he did. He was being judged for how he looked doing it. For staying calm. For not flailing. For not bleeding. Because when you fight back quietly, precisely, without rage, it scares people more. At home, his uncle Reggie noticed. "You holdin' something back?" he asked one night over coffee. Kareem nodded. "Trying to." Reggie stared long and hard. "Sometimes holding back's harder than swinging. But that don't mean you let them walk over you either." The next day, Kareem walked into school like he always had. Quiet. Focused. But now the silence around him wasn't safety. It was suspicion. And in a system that doesn't always look deeper than appearances, that kind of silence can speak louder than any punch ever could. By the end of the week, Kareem wasn't just alone, he was under siege. Rumors swirled like a winter storm, cold and relentless. The fight that had lasted no more than 12 seconds had turned into a legend, warped by whispers and reshaped by fear. What had started as self-defense was now being told as an act of violence. And Brock Simmons? He didn't just walk away from the incident, he ran with it. He began planting seeds. Soft-spoken lies to teachers in the hallway. Comments like, "I just don't feel safe around him," or "He's got something dangerous in his eyes." He made it seem like Kareem was unstable. Volatile. A threat. Soon enough, teachers started watching Kareem differently. Some stopped calling on him in class. Others pulled him aside with that fake concern that always comes with, "We just want to make sure you're okay." By Tuesday, he was pulled into the guidance office. "Just checking in," the counselor said with a too bright smile. "Do you ever feel angry?" Kareem blinked. "Why?" "No reason. Just asking." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because it was clear, they weren't checking on him. They were checking for something. Something to justify the growing discomfort. That night, a new post hit social media. A blurry photo of Kareem during the fight. Someone had slapped a caption across it. "He thinks he's in a movie. Scared yet?" It was posted from a burner account, but Kareem didn't need to ask who was behind it. The comments hit harder than the punches ever did. "He's not like us. He's been in juvie. Watch your back. Expel him before something worse happens." No one asked him what happened. No one cared that he never threw the first punch. They just needed someone to blame. By Wednesday, the school made it official. A letter went home. A district-level disciplinary hearing was scheduled. Kareem would need to appear with a parent or guardian. His uncle Reggie took off work and showed up in a pressed shirt and steel-toed boots, eyes steady as stone. Inside the conference room, they sat across from the principal, a school board member, and the head of student discipline. The room felt colder than the snow outside. "We've had several concerns raised," the board member said. "It's our responsibility to determine whether Kareem Tolliver poses an ongoing threat to student safety." Reggie leaned in. "My nephew didn't go looking for a fight. He tried to walk away. They cornered him. He gave them a warning. Then he defended himself. That's not a threat. That's survival. The board member frowned. Is it true he has combat training? Reggie didn't blink. Yes. And that training is why no one's in the hospital. Control isn't the enemy here. Fear is. Kareem finally spoke. They came after me. I didn't swing first. I didn't even want to be there. The room went silent. So what should I have done? Kareem asked. Let them beat me just to make everybody else feel comfortable. Even the principal shifted in his seat. Reggie shook his head slowly. You saw a big, quiet black kid who didn't back down, and you made him the problem. You didn't see the kid who was trying to stay out of trouble. Who walked away more times than most kids ever would. The meeting ended without a decision. The board said they needed time. More review. More evidence. But in that room, Kareem saw the truth. This wasn't just about a fight. It was about perception. And perception, once twisted, is hard to unwind. Outside, Reggie clapped a hand on Kareem's shoulder. You did good, he said. Even if they don't admit it, they heard you. Kareem nodded. But deep down, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the eye of a storm, calm, yes, but knowing the winds would pick up again. And they would. Friday morning arrived with a hush. The hearing was scheduled for that afternoon, and word had spread through Millstone High like smoke. Students walked the halls with that strange tension in the air, the kind that usually precedes a storm or a verdict. Kareem could feel it. Every step, every glance, every whisper. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was a story. A rumor in sneakers. And no matter how calm he looked, the pressure inside him was real. He sat alone at lunch, same table as always. This time, though, the solitude wasn't a choice, it was a sentence. Then, something changed. A girl slid into the seat across from him. Quiet, deliberate. Short auburn hair. Big glasses. A sketchbook clutched in one hand. Delaney Foster. She wasn't part of any crowd. Kareem had seen her in a few classes, always drawing, always quiet. She didn't say, hi. She leaned in and whispered. I saw everything. Behind the gym. I didn't mean to, I was sketching near the dumpsters for an art project. But I saw it all. Kareem stared. You're not just messing with me. Delaney shook her head. I didn't speak up because I was scared. But if they expel you over Brock's lie, and I stay silent, then I'm guilty too. That afternoon, Delaney came to the hearing. She sat at the long conference table, hands shaking slightly, her voice low, but clear. They surrounded him, she said. 3 of them. Logan swung first. Kareem told them to back off, twice. He only defended himself. The room changed. Even Principal Langford stopped taking notes. The board asked why she waited. Because I was afraid, Delaney admitted. But that's not a good excuse. 15 minutes later, the hearing ended. Outside, as Kareem and Reggie stepped into the parking lot, the winter wind cut across the asphalt. Kareem looked down at his boots, then over at his uncle. She didn't have to do that. Reggie nodded. No. But she did. And sometimes the right voice at the right time. That's what makes all the difference. The next morning, the email came in. Kareem Tolliver is not subject to disciplinary action. The school acknowledges he acted in self-defense. Reggie printed the letter and taped it to the fridge. But even with the verdict in Kareem's favor, the world didn't snap back to normal. At school, people looked at him differently, but not with respect. With distance. No jokes. No threats. But no conversation either. He was still the quiet kid. Still alone. But now they weren't ignoring him, they were avoiding him. Until one day, something unexpected happened. Miss Curtis, his English teacher, stopped him after class. "We're having a student-led assembly this week." One of the speakers dropped out. Some of us were wondering, would you be willing to say something? Kareem froze. "Like, in front of the school?" She smiled softly. "Only if you want to. But I think people need to hear you. Not the version that's been passed around. You." That night, Kareem sat on his bedroom floor, a blank notepad in his lap. He stared at the page for a long time. Then he wrote just one line. "I didn't ask to be here, but I'm not going anywhere either." The next morning, the auditorium was full. Lights dim. Teachers lining the walls. Hundreds of eyes facing forward. They called his name. He stepped to the microphone. No notes. No script. Just truth. "I've been called a lot of things since I got here. Quiet. Weird. Dangerous. Some of you probably still don't know what to make of me." A few nervous laughs. "I didn't come here to fight. I came here to graduate. I wanted what most of you want, to get through the day without drama." He paused. "Let the silence settle. If the only story you know about me is the one someone else told, then you never knew me at all." The gym was still. Then a clap. Then another. And then, a ripple of real, honest applause. That day, Kareem wasn't just defended, he was heard. The final bell of the semester rang across Millstone High like a starter's pistol. Lockers slammed. Backpacks zipped. Students spilled out into the hallways, laughter and plans for winter break echoing off the tiled walls. For most, it was just another Friday, 1 foot out the door, already halfway to freedom. But for Kareem Tolliver, it wasn't that simple. He stood by his locker, taking a little longer to pack his things. Not because he was slow. Not because he had nowhere to go. But because something inside him was still settling. Still wounded. He'd walked through fire and come out standing, but survival isn't the same as healing. Yes, he was cleared of wrongdoing. Yes, the truth had come out. But truth doesn't always erase what people choose to believe. And Kareem could feel it. In the silence. In the space people still left around him. In the way some teachers looked at him like he might still erupt. Justice had come. But peace? That was still a work in progress. Miss Curtis caught him by the door. "You did something brave," she said softly. "Most adults wouldn't have handled it the way you did." Kareem nodded. But the weight in his chest didn't lift. Because when you're quiet, when you're black, when you don't smile enough or speak loud enough or fit into the boxes people expect, you're easy to mislabel. Easy to misunderstand. And when you finally stand up for yourself, they don't always call it strength. They call it trouble. Later that afternoon, walking across the school courtyard, a younger kid stopped him. "Hey, are you the guy from the gym fight?" he asked, wide-eyed. Kareem sighed. "Yeah. Are you really trained to fight?" "I train to stay ready," Kareem replied. The kid hesitated, then said, "Can you teach me?" "Not to fight. Just so I'm not scared anymore." Kareem paused. Then smiled, just a little. "First lesson," he said, "stand tall. Even when it feels easier to shrink." They walked side by side across the blacktop, the winter sun low behind them. Not as fighter and student. Not even as mentor and mentee. Just two kids learning how to walk through a world that doesn't always make room for them. And that's where the real message lies. This story wasn't about violence. It wasn't about winning a fight. It was about what happens when people assume the worst of someone who's just trying to get through the day. It was about how fast fear can spread, and how easily silence can be weaponized. But most of all, it was about the courage to stay true to yourself, even when the crowd turns away. Even when the labels come fast and unfair. Even when your quiet becomes suspicious, and your strength becomes threatening. Kareem's story is one too many kids know by heart. They've lived it, in classrooms, cafeterias, parking lots. And if we're honest, some of us saw it decades ago and hoped the world had moved on. But here's what this story reminds us. Being misunderstood isn't a weakness. Choosing restraint when you could lash out, that's power. And standing your ground, with dignity and purpose. In a world trying to push you aside. That's the kind of strength that leaves a mark. So if this story moved you, share it. Because there's another Kareem out there right now, walking into a new school, a new job, a new room full of people waiting to judge before they understand. And maybe, just maybe, they'll be lucky enough to meet someone like Delaney. Or someone like you. In a world that often rushes to label, Kareem's story reminds us of a timeless truth: strength isn't loud, it's how you carry yourself when no one's clapping. Standing tall in the face of judgment, choosing restraint over rage, and staying true to who you are, these aren't just lessons for the young. They're reminders for all of us. Especially as we grow older, we know the value of character over appearance, truth over noise. And sometimes, the quietest people in the room carry the strongest light. All they need is someone willing to see it.